Welcome to the Act Out Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Tomlin. Today's guest is one of the co-founders of MELD Community Incorporated, Duncan Rich. Let's roll the tape. Hey, Duncan, thank you so much for coming on, man. So before we get into the to the meat of it, I think I remember reading. You're from is it Bearsville, New York?
Yeah, I live right outside Woodstock, New York, the most famous small town in the world, probably.
Yep.
And been living up here in the Catskills about 10 years, just 11 years. Love it. Absolutely love it.
So West Socrates, there's a house there, the Big Pink.
Yeah.
And I am a huge fan of the band.
Cool.
And so I got their album Music from the Big Pink.
Oh, cool.
And whenever I was looking at your bio and I saw Bearsville, I remember, I was so fascinated with the band. I looked up that whole area. And then I remember seeing Bearsville kind of close to West Socrates. I was like, if he knows anything about the band, oh man, I gotta.
Well, a couple of them still live here. It's a very, very storied area dating back to the concert, which was actually about 70, 80 miles away from here because it got too big and they had to move it. But even before that, there's a reason that all of those people ended up here and that Woodstock became what we come to know Woodstock as, a sort of hippie or, concert, cultural kind of place. People, sort of free-spirited folks, have always been coming to Woodstock, and that is white people. And also before white people were in the area, they say that this land, this part of the Catskills in particular, the native tribes would come here for ceremony and for ritual and I think to hunt, but they wouldn't live here because the energy, it was just a little too intense.
Yeah.
Maybe not too intense, but it just wasn't like a suitable place to build to have a home because of something that kind of everyone has a different way of explaining, but we all kind of feel living here. And then white people sort of came along and we'll live anywhere and we'll build houses over everything.
Well,
and now we get to experience kind of this really incredible, magical. I mean, the landscape is absolutely beautiful. And the culture here is really fun and wild and a lot of people sort of following their hearts. But there's something about it, and that's what everyone who sort of lives here says, is there's something about it that, really, really speaks.
Well, as you were talking about the Native American tribes, the energy there, I was thinking about a little bit later on in with like the Shaker movement. That was like born right in that area.
Yeah,
I believe, and like Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. He got his start there, and I had never really kind of like connected necessarily that region with that kind of energy until you had said something about the Native American tribe. That's just so fascinating to me.
And there were a number of really highly regarded painting schools that came out of here in the 1800s. The first artist colony in the U.S., the Birdcliff Artist Colony, is just on the other side of the mountain from where I live. People would come up from New York City in the 1800s to just escape the city, which was a pretty intense, it still is intense, but it was, pretty intense place back then. And they would come up and they would have these sort of week-long hedonist parties and gatherings. This is in the 1800s, in the late 1800s. And some people decided that like this was the place to stay to explore the arts. They formed the Birdcliff Artist Colony, which is still active and still alive. And some people, there was like a rift in the Birdcliff, in their ranks, and some people left and then started the second artist colony in the United States, just down the road, the Maverick Artist Colony. And they were, I don't know if they were actually sort of rivaling, but they existed at the same time. And this place has always called people to it for, what I would call magic. And it's a really, really beautiful place.
Well, I think I remember, did you grow up playing music?
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So do you think that you were kind of drawn to that area?
It's definitely part of the lure for me. Absolutely. To sort of walk through town and be like, oh yeah, Jimi Hendrix practiced in that church, which is now a movie theater. Or, there's pictures of Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin having coffee outside of that place right there, and stuff like that is really, it does speak to me. I did grow up playing music. I grew up in Boston. I was born in a part of Boston called Allston, and my parents moved us to Brookline, which is a really great place, really great schools and great community. And I grew up on a block with all my, a lot of really, really close friends from age 4 that I'm still in touch with, that, we got really close. When I was 10, when I was 9 or 10, I started playing the drums. My best friend, who lived sort of right behind me, we kind of, our backyards shared a fence. He started playing guitar at the same exact time. And so we started a band kind of instantly as 10-year-olds and, had some other people join. And that was always a big part of my life. Music is, in my opinion, music is the most sort of visceral, felt art form. Film is cool. You can get lost in film, but nothing really sort of takes over me like music can.
Well, think about this. A film, the scenes and the emotions that are elicited in film, a lot of times aren't just coming from the actors, but from the music. Like that background music is setting you up.
Yeah.
So if you're supposed to be afraid, it's going to have some Michael Myers music. So yeah, I would absolutely concur with that.
Yeah.
Do you think that, so it seems like music was kind of it helped form a sense of community for you early on?
Oh, yeah. Sense of community. It also gave me a way to connect with my body, I guess. To push myself and to, because I would play the drums. Once I got into the drums, it was kind of like a bottomless pit for me of energy, and it also felt cool. So that kind of that helped sort of keep me in the seat,
Yeah.
But to be able to sort of drill something over and over and over again until I nailed it, and then took it and sort of make it my own and really push myself in. It was the only thing that I really had like that, where I could kind of explore uninterrupted and really go deep and for long periods of time, and really, really, really explore. And it was okay for it to be out of the realm of traditional understanding. It was acceptable for it to sort of just be I don't know, I'm just following this thing, where as I think that is a really, really valuable thing for anyone to be able to access and pursue in any sort of walk of life, is chasing something that is a little bit unknowable and trying to, it's sort of blending this physical, non-physical realms, and just, I can't describe it better than just chasing something. You're chasing something, you don't quite know what it is, but you've got these sticks and you've got these limbs, and then it's just about how you wield them, and you can really go somewhere.
It may be hard to describe with words, but I could tell just in your in your tone, your voice, your passion for it. That passion kind of seeps out of it. You did say something at the very beginning that kind of struck me. You said it was a way for me to get in my body. So I'm assuming that kind of growing up, you spent a lot of time in your head. I'm saying because I spent a lot of time in my head.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of us do, when we're sort of, especially when we're growing up, we're sort of creating the world in our own worldview. We're creating the world that we want to live in. We're also sort of subject to the environment that we are in, and our parents or caregivers, and, our peers and our teachers. And especially growing up, we tend to give ourselves away a lot. We defer to a lot of people, we defer to authority, even when we kind of are unintentionally. And then so it's really nice to have a way to just be your own authority and And I would spend a lot of time in my head or sort of like questioning and, you know, trying to crack the nut and figure stuff out. And then it was nice to just kind of, so we only have the skills that we have in order to do that.
Right.
And it's nice to approach that kind of in a different way and be looking for something a little bit more amorphous and bigger. That it always felt bigger. And then being able to use my body was always, you know, I grew up playing soccer. I grew up doing a lot of sports and being really active. And the drums kind of fit right in with that, being able to use my body to get tired, to like feel the burn and to feel like I've done something or I've been somewhere was really powerful for me. I also had a strong tendency to dissociate, to kind of like disappear from, you know, my environment, from what was going on. Yeah.
I remember it definitely wasn't the first time that I did, but I remember being in the mobile home and feeling like I was floating outside of my body. And whenever like I came back, I remember being so scared because it was like, if that happens again, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back in my body or not.
Well,
and it would be like terrifying.
Yeah. Out of body experience. Yeah. And oftentimes, you know, what I've come to learn later and through my training and everything is that out of body experiences are the nervous system sort of, or can be the nervous system being overwhelmed, needing to disconnect, needing to separate yourself, create some space between what is happening or what is happening to you, or just something that your body is looking after you by removing you from this event or these circumstances. A lot like, you know, like the gazelle that gets kind of taken down by the lion and goes into a freeze response, which is one of the ways that our nervous system protects us. You freeze, you sort of shut down, you cut yourself off from the feelings, from feeling. And when you cut yourself off from feeling, then, you know, you're not in as much pain. And a lot of us do that a lot.
Yeah.
You know, in subtle ways and not so subtle ways. You know, we have something that I kind of call like a functional freeze, which is where we're walking around with parts of us that are just kind of numbed out and disconnected. And that's the pattern that we have been living in for decades sometimes. And we don't really know how to get back in touch with those parts because the model that we've been given doesn't really allow us to process and release the stuff that we're holding or that's holding us.
Sorry.
So yeah, no, go ahead.
You were saying to get back in touch, like with your feelings. For me, it was actually getting in touch with my feelings for the first time. And I was in my mid-30s whenever that happened. Like I was 37 whenever I felt like my brain and body connected for the very first time.
Wow. Yeah. So, and I hear you, and I want to push back on that a little bit. We're all born knowing how to do that.
Okay.
We're all born with the skills and abilities to feel and to process and to express perfectly. You know, it sounds to an adult, a baby sounds like it's kind of like, you know, what do you want? What are you talking about? You know, but the baby knows, you know, we're born with this perfect ability. Like, I'm hungry, I'm going to make it known. I pooped, you know, I'm going to make it known. I need help. I need connection. I need you. I'm going to make it known. And that's, you know, we're meant to be able to do those things, but those skills, they get eroded. And we think about it like, well, that's growing up, but it's actually an erosion of these skills of connecting, of expressing ourselves, of processing what's happening to us, that we lose because of it's inconvenient for the people around us. You know, like, stop. Like, telling a kid to stop crying doesn't make them feel better. It makes them cut themselves off from the thing that is, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm not allowed to feel this. So, and this is an unconscious behavior that becomes a belief system. When family or trauma or stress or culture, society, just life, life as we have sort of set it up becomes this thing that chips away at our skills and abilities. But those skills and abilities are innate to humans, to mammals, and to other animals. And many of them we share with, even sort of pre-reptilian, simple organism type creatures, like our nervous systems evolved from those, from these beings.
Yeah.
And you can witness the behavior of like amoebas and small organisms behaving in sort of similar ways to how we behave now, fighting off a threat, running from a threat, or just closing down and just and just kind of surrendering. So, I hear you that it feels like you've never been able to do it before, but you were born doing it, feeling, connecting, expressing, processing. And so it's coming back is what it is. It's like a reawakening of these skills or tools, we call them sometimes, that they just need to be sharpened, and we need to be reminded that they're there and how to access them, because a lot of the patterns that we have don't include them. A lot of the patterns that we've formed, they sort of like necessitate us not being in touch with those parts of ourselves.
Let's kind of go like a little deeper into the reasons why we separate from ourselves. One of the first ones you were talking about, I think you said culture. So what is it about the culture in which we're raised, we're specifically men, where men are kind of taught to remove themselves from feelings?
Sure. Yeah. Well, men from a very early age, or boys from a very early age, are taught to, suck it up, to get over it, to figure it out. If you see a little boy on the playground and they get hurt, oftentimes the first thing a parent will say is like, "You're okay. You're okay."
Rub some dirt on it.
Yeah. And okay, I'm okay. I guess this pain that I feel, that's nothing, and so we start to erode that connection, that connective ability. Movies, books, culture sort of prescribes that a man behaves in a very sort of, a very narrow context. He's quiet, keep your problems to yourself, be the roof, be everyone's shelter, be able to answer all the questions, be able to, fix the problems and do it on your own, do it alone. If you asked for help, then you haven't sort of come by it honestly. Weakness, being vulnerable is being weak, which is crap. It's total crap, in my opinion. Like being vulnerable, it takes a much stronger man to be vulnerable than it does to just suppress and repress what's actually like going on for them and what's been controlling them and sort of, dictating their lives. So culture is a big determiner for what we end up believing about ourselves is okay or not.
It is unreal how deeply ingrained the lesson that vulnerability was weakness, was bad, that was just so like far into my brain that like it has taken so much work to get out. But I think what has helped me more than anything with that mind shift frame is realizing that like the strongest that I ever was whenever I was vulnerable enough to ask for help in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And good job noticing that. A lot of us will skip right over that and be like, okay, I fixed it. Now let me put this armor back on. And there's a time for armor, there's definitely a time to be powering through, but it just can't be the only tool in the toolbox, because then we end up getting overwhelmed. We end up being overburdened. We end up putting ourselves kind of last on the list and saying stuff like, well, once I take care of everything for everyone, then everything will stop, essentially leave me alone. Everything will leave me alone and I'll have some time for myself. But I mean, I'm a dad. That time, that doesn't exist, like that time never comes. It's about having the boundaries enough to say, like, I'll give to you as much as I can. And the limit of what I can includes me caring for myself and taking care of myself. Plus, also, like, when you teach your kids to just like give, and don't take care of yourself, what do you think they're going to grow up to do? They're going to grow up to do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some of the best advice that I ever received from a friend of mine when I became a dad, she had 2 kids who are a little older than my son. And she's like, make yourself happy. You have to make yourself happy, even if it sort of feels like it's at the cost of, making them happy. You make yourself happy, you show them how to make themselves happy. And then they're not growing up to constantly be making everyone else happy first,
It seems so counterintuitive, but it is absolutely 100% necessary to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else.
Exactly.
You can show up better before your kid in the first place. But more than that, kids learn by modeling more so than I can tell my son all day long, do this, this. But what he's going to probably see more than anything else is how I'm acting.
Exactly.
And he's going to take that lead.
Yeah.
So no pressure or anything, right?
Well, it does absolutely feel like pressure. Like, oh God, like now I'm under scrutiny, or I've got to get my shit together, or whatever it is. But the flip side of that is you get to take care of yourself. You get to feel better, and they just pick it up. There's no better gift that you can give your son or daughter than your own regulated system, like your own regulated nervous system. Then they just boom, okay, dad's safe. Dad, I can trust dad. It might not always be what I want to hear, but I can trust that it's true, and I can trust, and that trust then sort of is woven into the fabric of y'all's relationship. And that is a really, really powerful thing, more so than fear, more so than, I mean, most of it's fear, at least in my, upbringing, where you're just kind of just like, okay, I learned stuff by getting in trouble. I was just like, oh, okay, I guess that's not what I'm supposed to do, because now I'm getting punished. And okay, noted, I will do what I can not to do that again. But, as a kid, you're not in control. You're just, you're playing out this kind of animal, the animal system that we are. And that runs up against the culture, the family, stress, that kind of thing. Those factors that we were talking about, and how can you make space for that animal to coexist while also, being a member of society to a certain extent, or to the extent that's comfortable, and contributing, being a part of a family. It's not like just go do full wild man. You can do that. I've done that. I did that. I lived on a school bus for a long time, playing music all over the country, just kind of not really being beholden to anyone except myself and the guys, in the bus. And we, and myself in particular, I sort of leaned into the full sort of, freedom element of that. And that was really great for some things, and it was not great for other things, like building relationships and being, feeling like I had people I could trust, outside of my sort of immediate sort of family. And so there's something to be said for having a relationship with the animal, but not letting any one thing sort of be able to run you, being able to stay in the driver's seat.
I've said that the most difficult thing for parenting for me is trying to parent myself while also parenting my son at the same time. It seems like we're using a little bit different language to essentially describe the thing.
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, there's no better there's no better opportunity. Like becoming a father for me was like a huge opportunity for me to learn about myself and about what comes out of me when I'm pressed, when the stress hits, and just hearing all the ways and feeling the ways, good and not so good of the ways that my parents come out of me. I'll just make a joke and I'll be like, man, my dad, I sound like my dad so much. It's in there. It's our default operating system. And we get the opportunity to sort of take that out and look at it again as we're sort of passing it on. And you can always, like, as you're passing it on, you can always adjust. You can always say like, hey, buddy, like when I said that before, that's not what I meant. What I meant was this. And this is, you can always clean up. You can always sort of it's never too late to, show up with that vulnerability and take ownership of the mess you made or the thing that you didn't get quite right. There is this really intense pressure for men to, possibly for everyone, but I've felt it in the context of men to just like not mess up, don't mess up. You can't mess up. Like this isn't practice. This is real life, and the stakes just feel so high, and that in itself is very sort of like, it's crippling. It's very like causes people to sort of shut down and stay in and not share something, especially today when everyone's got their phones out, where, if you make a mistake, it could be on the internet or whatever. And it's like, I'm 42. When I grew up, like we made mistakes. We all did. We all made mistakes, and that was part of it. And that's how we learn. And we've kind of lost a lot of those like cultural dojo kind of situations where you get to try something out. And if it doesn't hit, then you get that feedback, but it's not like you don't have to be scared that your life is over, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's in no way like making apologies for bad behavior. We always take responsibility for our behavior. We have to experiment, and we have to try, and we have to learn by doing, and we're going to fail. And that's part of it. It's got to be okay to fail. It's got to be, there's got to be some safety in failure so you can learn from it and move forward, and not, and not just have that be the end.
So I think that for me, what I was able to like finally be able to do to like help me be able to kind of see behavior from a different lens was I used to be very judgmental with my behavior. Like if I did something, you're a piece of shit, you're wrong. It was whatever it was bad. But learning that it was safe to make a mistake and that you could, and it not be a threat to your existence, was kind of enough to help me be able to start looking at behavior with more of a curiosity frame as opposed to a judgmental frame. And I think that was really important for me in helping kind of like adjust that mindset to be able to even kind of change in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Judgment is a big one that we all kind of internalize from the world, from our parents, just all of the places. And again, like, we're not born judgmental. It's something that it's something that we learn. It's something that we pick up along the way. So we can unlearn it, or we can figure out another angle. Like you're saying, curiosity that's having the space and the wherewithal and the resilience even to approach a situation, an unfamiliar situation, with curiosity. Like that's what, that's where we ought to be headed, is, seeking out the understanding and seeking out the answers with curiosity instead of, posturing like we already know. There's so much that we don't know, and we're never going to know if we just if we write it off,
I guess this would be a great time to bring up MELD. You have a program that is kind of doing exactly what we're talking about, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So I co-founded and co-run a organization called MELD, which is with my business partner, whose name is Owen Marcus. He's 72 years old. He has been distilling, at one time fringe and now much more mainstream, more accepted somatic technologies, somatic practices from many, many different lineages into a method that is geared towards men, that helps men downregulate in stressful situations, like while the stress is occurring. And it can bring online parts of ourselves that we have sort of been frozen away from or have been disconnected from, sometimes for decades. Some of these original parts that we're talking about with parts and skills. And so at MELD, we train this method for sort of expanding your functional capacity under stress. And we do it together. So there's the co-regulation, the men's group element to it as well. And the power of men sitting together and especially doing this kind of work together, it cannot be overstated. Like the power of a men's group is the best kind of practice that you can find in terms of, getting to know more about yourself, getting to know more about yourself under stress, noticing in your body what happens when there is conflict. And then instead of just going along for the ride while this other thing is sort of running you, you get to have a say. You learn to have a say in, how you conduct yourself, how you respond instead of react. So at MELD, we have trainings, we train therapists and coaches to weave our method into their practice.
Okay.
We offer retreats for just, anyone, any man can come, and we have online programs as well. And we are really trying to help men show up as more of themselves, to have them reconnect these parts that they have been disconnected from, and to pull more fulfillment from life, connect with what's really important to them, improve the way that they show up in their relationships. It really impacts every aspect of life. Like personally, when you're solo in your relationships, either your marriage or your partnerships or at work, and then also your connection to who you really are and what you want to do, and what's meaningful for you, and how you can sort of turn that into an offering for the world. How you can contribute meaningful work is a big part of what we find guys come to us for. And so we've been doing MELD for a couple of years, for 2 years now. Before that, Owen and I were together at a company called Everyman. We worked there together for years. And before that, Owen had the Sandpoint Men's Group, which he founded based on this method. This methodology sort of was born out of a personal need from, Owen's sort of realizing that there was more sort of that wasn't being accessed. And Owen, who is my teacher, was a Rolfer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Rolfing, but it's like
no, I'm not.
It's a very physically intense kind of body work that's all about realigning your structure with gravity and structural alignment. And he would work on sort of athletes and fighters and stuff like that in the 90s. And he found that, okay, cool. Now, I've like dug my elbow into your, leg muscle enough. You are starting to, like, these old frozen tissues and bands and muscles are starting to find their shape and their place again. Why did you get sort of out of alignment in the first place? Like, how can we go a step deeper? Cause I'll help fix you, but also, like, what's the preventative key here? And he found that, 99% of the time, except for sort of like, well, I was in a car accident and this happened, but 99% of the time, the answer is for our physical misalignment is emotional. Like, how come you started having your shoulders like this and your sort of chest caved in, or your
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, or you're sort of like aggressive, kind of like I'm ready to fight all the time, kind of, or how come your legs started turning out instead of staying straight and all this stuff. And he found that he's traced it back in a lot of guys, and he started experimenting with a method to address the emotional components that are just kind of forgotten. They're just like like in the same way that we'll sort of like get the surgery to fix your back, but not really addressing like your back, that disc popped out because your legs have been pulling on your back muscles, and you can get the surgery and that'll relieve the pain for a little while, but your legs are still pulling on your back. And that's why some of these are like repeat surgeries.
You're literally describing I had my L5-S1 disc fused together.
Yeah.
From
L4, L5. Yep.
So as you're saying, I was like, yep, I know he's right.
Yep. I didn't get the fusion. But my L4, L5 disc is bulging out, stenosis, sciatica down the leg, and that's really common. And it's especially in men, and it's hard to separate that sort of that back pain from like the load that you're carrying, like the weight of your responsibilities, and then plus whatever else you're carrying on top of that. We're carrying stuff from, we carry everyone's stuff, and it's kind of what we're trained to do. And not a lot of us have great boundaries around saying like, I love you, but that's your thing. And if I find the time, I can help you with that. But right now, what I need is this, and sort of taking care of ourselves in that sort of way. And so to bring it back, the work that we do at MELD is really about slowing down, because a lot of times we just miss this stuff in the speed, the pace of life. So we slow down, we open up to what is actually there, and we work with the signals of the body. We work somatically, so below the intellect, beneath the layer of of understanding and intellectualization, which is subject to our patterns and beliefs and all that stuff. So we get
I'm a recovering intellectualizer.
Nice. I've not heard that one, but that's a good one. Yeah. I mean, the mind is an incredible tool and an incredible, asset. And it can't be the only way that we approach things, like the expression, trust your gut. There are signals coming from your body that we have lost the ability to listen to. And, we base some of our work on polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges's.
What is that?
So polyvagal theory is, it's a really complex theory about the nervous system and how, the vagus nerve that comes from our brainstem down and works with a lot of our unconscious processes is impacted by stress. It deals with a lot of things, but the way that I'm sort of most concerned with it is sort of the unconscious, subconscious implications of our stress response and the impact that has on our body and our body's impact that it has on our brain. And so one of the things that polyvagal theory says is 80%. One of the things that polyvagal theory has discovered, like through research, is that 80% of the information in our system flows upward from the body to the brain. So when you have an experience, first, you have a physical experience. Your body is on the front line. It responds first. Then you have an emotional experience, which is also kind of, a physical experience, a physical, chemical, emotional experience. And then finally, you have a cognitive, intellectual experience. And so that's the bottom-up approach, where there are all these earlier signals and interventions that can be used that we just don't factor those in. We live in a very sort of top-down society,
very much so.
Culture, where everything is sort of dictated from the mind. What should I do? It's like, well, you thinking about that it's not free of those patterns and beliefs that you have about the world and about, that you learned. And a lot of times you learned those patterns and beliefs in stress. You learned those under threat. And then that's why you can't sort of outthink a belief system, right? So you can't intellectualize your way out of something that your body believes, right? So
I tried, and you definitely cannot.
We all try. And it takes and that's what a lot of the stuff out there is offering. It's offering inspiration and motivation and hacks and tips and tricks. And, some of that stuff is great. But in terms of making lasting, sustainable changes, you got to get in underneath, like all those fail over time. All of that inspiration and motivation fails over time because you can be as motivated as you want, and then you hit a wall and you get stressed, and then the same old shit starts coming out of you. So we get in underneath. We use the body because you ask a guy like, all right, how are you feeling? And, good, I'm fine. It's like, I'm fine.
Or they'll tell you what they're thinking, not feeling.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, we intellectualize our feelings all the time. But so you ask about their emotion. If you use the word emotion, then they're, okay, they're gone. Like, just get me out of here. But, you'll get like sort of a really, what you can feel it. It's a kind of shut down answer. But if you say, like, you ask a man what he's feeling in his body, it takes the pressure off. It takes the, sort of the triggering words away. And, it's like, okay, yeah, well, my mouth is really dry because I've been yakking a lot. My chest is kind of tight and I'm feeling a little warm under my arms and my back is kind of stiff. And it's the gateway into the unconscious, into those deeper layers. And, it's incredible what we are able to perceive about ourselves when we can just slow down a little bit, just a little bit, like we get guys coming into some of our programs and they've never done anything like this, but they've been in therapy for decades, and they listen to podcasts and they've checked out the self-help books and, they exercise and they check all the boxes, but all of, those are all part of this old model that is, we're sort of collectively, I think some of this is starting to sort of bubble up to the surface now culturally because we're kind of reaching the ceiling of what this very narrow definition of what being a man is and what that offers. And people are starting to be like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more than this. And there is a lot more. We don't know how to find it because again, how do you move into a different model when your default operating system is a very particular kind of way? The answer to that is train. You train, you practice, you get in a men's group, you learn about somatics in the body, and you train and you do it with other men if you can, because the co-regulation piece is incredible. It's a biological necessity that we just kind of go without, or we sort of rely on our partner as like the main source of our co-regulation, and that's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of weight, and we're doing it for them also. And having a men's group is one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life.
What is so fascinating about it to me is it seems like there's such a strong community aspect of it that actually takes almost like a center stage role in the healing process on the individual level.
Oh, big time. Yeah. Especially at our retreats, even if you show up, you're just kind of like, I don't know what I need. That's the kicker. And that's what keeps a lot of us stuck, is like, I know something isn't right. I know something needs to change. That's about all I know. And then you see a man have an experience and you feel it. You're like, shit, that was very real for me.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody starts connecting and starts just kind of like popping one by one, or sometimes more than one by one, and doing this in community. We evolved in community. It's in our DNA that not to be alone. This lone wolf, the whole concept of the lone wolf is hilarious, because wolves are pack animals.
Right.
Like, wolves exist, hunt, live together. They do everything together. And humans were that way until essentially, industrialization came along and started dictating more of our time and more of our day and how we live, and gearing our energy towards, production and productivity instead of existence and survival. I mean, it's a very complicated evolutionary, timeline and scope, but there are some things that you can point to as just like, oh yeah, that hasn't been great for us.
One specific thing you were saying is, that kind of got me thinking, the whole alpha male. That is based off of like skewed research that was just like way off base. So essentially what the lead scientists thought in this experiment was that wolves just changed groups like every so often. And so what would happen is, whenever you would like change the groups of wolves around, the biggest, baddest one would dominate. And it would do so by force and kind of what you would think of as the alpha male. But what actually happens in these pack settings, the alpha is in the back whenever they're marching. Whenever they're going forward, the alpha's in the back to make sure that everybody is in front, everybody's around. It's much more of a leadership role as opposed to this, I'm gonna strike you down with force.
Yeah. The modern conception of alpha male is just so delusional. It's from a nervous system standpoint, and from a somatic standpoint, it's like fear, anger personified. It's like, this is not strength. You might be really motivated and going to the gym a lot, or making yourself sort of look a certain way, but the thing that's driving you is fear and anger and probably shame, and there's probably sadness in there too. And it's just so closed and it's so rigid. It's kind of like, and everyone else around you is kind of like, okay, bro, like, believe the thing if you want to believe it, but it's actually like terribly fragile. It's real fragility, sort of openly, sometimes laughably on display. And I don't mean to put anyone down, like we all end up, we all sort of get to where we're going one way or another. So if you identify sort of as alpha, that's a signal that, like, what is it that you're protecting? What is it that is inside you that is really what is the need there? Like, what's missing? And I guarantee you, like, money and cars and bitches or whatever it's not going to fill the hole. It's not going to fill the fulfillment or the satisfaction of life. It's when you are trying to fill internal holes with external pursuits, it just never happens. You don't get there, but you do get sort of alienated from the people around you, and you do sort of like end up, whittling away your options for real connection. So yeah, the whole alpha male sort of misconception it's really prevalent in culture right now. And And I don't know. I want to think that it's going to burn itself out at some time because it's just not sustainable. Not real.
No, you're absolutely right. And so growing up, I used to watch professional wrestling. And so if you've seen it, you know, like you're always talking like, I'm the best, I'm the biggest, I'm the baddest. And so I had this misconception kind of that like, okay, so if you're the biggest, the baddest, the best, you just say it over and over and over again. And then it took me a very long time to realize that wrestling isn't the real world. And if you're actually the biggest, the baddest, the best, you're not going to have to tell a single soul that. People are going to know that on their own.
Right. Yeah. With, the wrestling example, I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I would sneak it when I could. First of all, the steroids do a lot of things to your hormones and to your body that are not in balance. And then the sort of like hyper aggressive persona, like a lot of, at least when we were growing up, I understand it's different now, and I've lost touch with sort of what wrestling is doing these days. But at the time, it was like, these like sweaty, hulking, veins, a lot of yelling, a lot of sort of foaming at the mouth, like,
cocaine,
a lot of drugs, a lot of cocaine. And then you look at sort of where that leads, and it's like, okay, a lot of these guys have really serious health issues. A lot of these guys, divorces and, super early. And that is kind of like that's kind of an example of what the alpha male, that's like the alpha male on steroids, so to speak.
Literally,
like what that path sort of leads you towards. That movie, The Wrestler, I think it's a Darren Aronofsky movie, it's like crushingly depressing, but it's really, really amazing.
Yeah. Mickey Rourke's amazing in that.
Yeah, he's awesome. That's a great movie. That shows the other side of it and shows the cost, there is a cost, and we don't want to have the cost be so high that you can't kind of come back from it.
One thing about the hypnosis is like the high of performing is essentially like a drug.
Oh yeah.
It's not essentially, it is a drug for them. And, and I think like kind of The Wrestler, the movie shows that where, it's just that they're so addicted. I need to get that one last hit, and you just keep going on, and it will wreak havoc on your body. And you're right.
Absolutely. And I mean, wrestling in particular, is a very physically demanding occupation, but even as a musician, do the same thing, performing every night, sort of not really, not really being able to wind down, going on stage and sort of connecting with all these people, and then immediately going off, and it's just it's so much up and down and highs and lows, and it's very, very difficult to cope with how the body responds to that. And so that's why, myself included, sort of a lot of performers and a lot of artists, a lot of sort of public facing performers turn to drugs and alcohol and these other sort of state regulation strategies because, in order to feel good, they've got to disconnect from something, or just get up and out, or, get super high, or get, just kind of dull the world around them a little bit, because it is really intense. It's really, really incredibly intense, and it's a very incredibly intense thing to be present for. And so we end up sort of severing that connection with the presence in a variety of really destructive kind of ways.
Yeah. At one of my lowest points, I remember like finding a random pill and like some cellophane and a piece of cellophane, and like had the thought like, I don't know what this is, but guarantee you it's going to make me feel better than what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
And like to think of how just I emotionally just broken I was at that point, where, I mean, it could have been rat poison for all I knew, but even that would have felt better than how I felt then.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, And so I like to take a very, very compassionate approach with that sort of thing. Like that is you doing that and me doing that and all of us who are sort of coping in various different ways. These are strategies for us to feel better.
Mhm.
And we're not wrong for wanting to feel better or for needing to feel better. And so we can try to like get the stigma out of, certainly around addiction or around substance abuse. Like this is a state regulation strategy. You're doing this because you need to do it. Now, can we create the space to look at why you need to do this? Can we make the space and slow down enough to have an honest look and really feel into where does this come from? Why did I start doing this? Is usually very human, and it's often very common. It's very, we share. Our stories are each a little bit different, but the underlying drivers are there. We have so much in common. So, you're not wrong. You're not bad. You're not broken. You're not defective when you use coping strategies like that. And it is your responsibility to, to do something if you want to make a change. So similar, like I say to my guys, I work one-on-one with guys, like I coach and I teach. And this isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. A lot of this stuff comes from our parents. A lot of the stuff comes from culture. A lot of the stuff, with our parents, like, where did they get it? Well, they got it from their parents. And where did they get it? So it's not like you can point to someone like you're bad. You started this thing. This is the paradigm. This is the system that we all live in and that we've inherited. And so it's not our fault that we have lost the ability to process and to express ourselves and to connect and to feel our feelings. But it is our responsibility if we want to change things. If you don't want to change things, you don't have to. You can keep going the way that you're going, but it would be unwise to expect things to change on their own, or that things to sort of trickle down from society into then your life, and we're all sort of living that way. That's the top-down approach. The bottom-up approach is each individual starts to wake up just a little bit more to more of themselves, starts waking up these lost resources that we are all born with. This is our God-given rights to connection and to expression and to processing. And so when we each individually make that change, you can make the biggest change in the smallest circles. And sometimes that's just the self.
I love that.
Nice. Yeah, that was a good one. So but if we each individually do that, that's a grassroots, they call that like a grassroots kind of movement. But I think about it like, so the body is sick and the body is kind of like culture. It's all of us. But if each of the cells individually starts to wake up health within themselves, then eventually the body is going to become a healthy body. And so you don't have to invent the thing that's going to fix the world. You don't have to impact millions of people with an app or a technology or some invention or anything. The best thing that you can do is feel better, is work on yourself, and then experience the ripple effect of how that moves outward in your life. When I started feeling better, I started doing better. I started performing better. I wasn't sort of playing music at the time, but I started performing in life better. I started putting myself in better situations. I started connecting with the person who's now my wife deeper and building a deeper relationship and repairing damage that I have done. And when I start doing better, then my family starts doing better. And then my family is, sort of broadcasting, rippling out.
Mm-hmm.
And then our community is the recipient of us doing a little bit, like our friends and our community up here in Woodstock is amazing. So many people that I love that are doing such really amazing, cool work. But we are interdependent with our community and with people who are not sort of in our community. Like we are all dependent on each other, some ways very directly, in some ways it's subtle and it's indirect. But when I start doing better, the people around me start doing better.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing better, I start doing better. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that sounds a little woo-woo and a little amorphous, but it's
true.
It's true. And it's true because we impact each other. When I go out and, someone else is in a shitty mood, that can impact me. When somebody, cuts me off and then I get sort of activated about that. And then I pass that activation on to, the next person. It works the opposite way also. When I'm feeling good and I'm passing on, love and connection and respect and generosity and openness and patience and listening and regulation, then that's received, that gets broadcasted. So I'm a big believer, we are not like meant to be so siloed. We are not meant to be so isolated. The technology piece of this is really major. The phones, the social media, the promise of connection that is actually just like incredibly dysregulating, and at the cost of actual connection sometimes with the people that are in the room with you. So just taking care of ourselves, doing what we can to awaken these sort of sleeping parts of ourselves, and showing up like authentically and vulnerably and being open to what's actually there. And having the resilience to be open to the truth that's down in there. There's a lot to it. I think there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
I think, most, if you look at most sort of like revolutions are a bottom up, it's people saying like, oh, you think fuck this too? 'Cause I think fuck this. Oh, we're all saying fuck this? Man, they've got us in our homes individually saying fuck this, but actually everyone around me is saying fuck this. So like, why? Okay, we can do something with that,
I tell you, man, I've had an absolute blast talking with you today, Duncan. I really
same.
appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. This has been really, really fun. It's been great to connect with you, man.
All right. Maybe next time we can do this in person. I really want to check out Woodstock.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'll have you up here for sure.
Well, Duncan, thank you so much for acting out with me, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Adam. It's really great.